There is no shortage of miracles for those who are mindful. I was looking for a project and I found a saint. This is the mantra of Chen Rezig, the Bodhisattva of loving kindness and compassion, and the patron Bodhisattva of Tibet. Om Mani Padme Hum is one of the oldest mantras and one of the most popular. It's an open mantra. Anyone can say it. You don't need teaching or initiation from a lama to recite this. The syllables roughly mean jewel in the lotus. The 14th Dalai Lama, who is believed to be a manifestation of Chen Rezig, has said this about the mantra. The 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum, mean that in dependence on the practice of a path, which is an indivisible union of method and wisdom, you can transform your impure body, speech, and mind into the pure exalted body, speech, and mind of a Buddha. I love this mantra, and I love the idea that anyone could say 10 malas and become a blessing to water. That is pretty amazing. So, by the way, in case you'd like to try it yourself, a mala is a set of 108 repetitions of the mantra. So, if you feel like blessing some water with your body, that's a mere 1,080 repetitions. I was raised in the Roman Catholic Church, back in the days of meatless Fridays and fasting before communion. The church used to say, "Give us a child at an impressionable age, and they will be ours for life." That's very true. One thing you may know about Roman Catholicism, we have saints. We have saints for nearly everyone and almost every problem you may encounter. And like Chen Rezig, they are always ready to help and always there to intercede for us. We have only to ask. We have St. Jude for lost causes. We have St. Anthony for lost items. And for travelers, like all of you, we have St. Christopher. We have over 6,000 saintly manifestations of Mary alone. Some of our saints don't quite make the canon. This is Saint Jesus Malverde, the patron saint of drug dealers. We have ancient saints and modern saints, European, Asian, Middle Eastern, African, American, Latino, and indigenous saints, men, women, and adolescents, martyrs, mystics, and missionaries. And each of them is believed to have caused at least 2 miraculous interventions, either during or after their earthly life. But what we don't have yet are any saints that are not human. Every saint we have is part of our species. The word Catholic means universal. Maybe it's time to apply that thinking to our communion of saints. And if we can beatify that being, can we? Shouldn't we then canonize her? Shouldn't we add her name, Saint Helianthus, to the communion of saints? She is one who is venerated and called upon in our times of need, always willing to help. We have only to ask. I first spent time with the Venerable Helianthus last year. I learned of this mill through the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. It was built in the 19th century as a silk mill. The nearly 4-acre site was badly contaminated with perchloroethylene. And although the owner had already hired an environmental engineering firm to remove as much of the perc as possible from the soil, sadly, there remained 2 underground plumes of the material, moving with the groundwater slowly but inexorably to the Connecticut River. Helianthus could intercept these plumes and with her special gift, take the perc from the soil, process it through her body, and exhale the broken down compounds at levels well below toxic. The mill owner agreed to let me work, and so I planted thousands and thousands of Helianthus on his site, concentrating on the areas where the contamination was the worst. She grows where she is needed, in urban soil laced with lead and arsenic, in water and soil contaminated with radioactive isotopes, in land saturated in volatile organic compounds, places where we would sicken and die, she grows. Does she suffer as she lives, performs her miraculous work, and then dies? We do not know. She is the silent saint. She does not speak. These images will have to speak for her. Helianthus is a native of North and Central America. She was grown to feed indigenous people throughout Mexico, Central America, and the American Southwest. She traveled as seed to Europe, and she was much beloved by the people there for her radiant beauty. She was so loved by Peter the Great, Tsar of Russia in the 18th century, that he brought her seeds home with him. And there she grew and grew and grew. She was to become the national flower of Russia. And that is where her first modern miracle takes place. Yes, she is radiantly beautiful. And yes, her seeds are rich with nutrition, protein, iron, fat, and other good things. But what you cannot perceive is all the work she does, so silently, so gracefully, as she grows. You see, as she grows, she is cleansing the material in which she grows, leaving it better than when she first sprouted. And it is this gift, her special ability as a hyper-accumulator, that brings us to her first modern miracle, cleansing the radioactive waters of Pripyat, the site of the catastrophe you call Chernobyl. On April 26, 1986, the world's worst nuclear accident occurred in Pripyat, a small town near Kiev in the Ukraine. In Chernobyl, the roof of the reactor containment building blew open. A fireball shot up into the sky, and flames shot over 1,000 feet into the air for 2 days. Here are 3 of the more than 22,000 heroic liquidators sent to put out the fires, stop the radioactive water leaking from the plant, and minimize the civilian casualties of those living nearby. The white bands you see at the bottom of the frame were caused by the radiation leaking from the plant into the camera body, marking the film. Liquidators provided first aid in the aftermath of Chernobyl, but thousands of civilians needed to be evacuated. The Russian government has never stated how many casualties resulted from the accident. In the area around Chernobyl, over 1,000 square miles, was left a radioactive wasteland. But the liquidators would find help in their mission, help from a source they could not have anticipated. The research of these 2 Russian scientists laid the groundwork for the water remediation that was implemented in the ponds of Chernobyl. Simple yet effective. St. Helianthus is nothing if not optimistic, and she gladly partnered with the liquidators to begin the salvage of Chernobyl. And here she is, in a pond in Chernobyl, floating on a little styrofoam raft, busily cleaning radioactive isotopes out of the water. Materials so toxic, we can't even go near them unprotected. Thank you, St. Helianthus. And now to another part of the world, and another catastrophe, and another miracle of St. Helianthus. On March 11th, 2011, a tsunami struck the coast of Japan. in the aftermath of the Tohoku earthquake earlier that same day. And near the coast was a nuclear energy plant. This would become the worst nuclear accident since Chernobyl. When the earthquake struck, the fission reactors automatically shut down. But the tsunami that followed disabled the generators that otherwise could have operated the pumps required to cool down those reactors. This overheating caused 3 nuclear meltdowns in units 1, 2, and 3 between March 12th and March 15th of that year. There were multiple hydrogen air explosions and radioactive material was released. The corporation responsible for the Fukushima reactors, TEPCO, or Tokyo Electric Power Company, were found responsible for failing to meet basic safety requirements, such as risk assessment, preparation for containment of collateral damage, and developing safe, adequate evacuation procedures for the surrounding area and the residents. An estimated 130 to 640 people are expected to develop cancer and die as a direct result of their exposure to radioactivity on those days. In addition, 1,600 elderly who were housed in nearby nursing facilities died as a result of ad hoc, poorly managed, poorly implemented evacuations. And while there are still no clear, well-developed plans, TEPCO estimates it will require an additional 30 to 40 years, as well as an unknown amount of money to finally decommission the plant. Despite construction of a wall of frozen soil meant to contain the radioactive water released by their failure, it was acknowledged in July 2016 that the contaminated water has mixed with local groundwater and will continue to do so. TEPCO's response: they are, quote, technically incapable of blocking off groundwater with the frozen wall. Fukushima was a catastrophe, a place with a before and an after. But the Japanese did not give up. Within weeks of the disaster, people came together to remediate the area. Professor Emeritus Masamichi Yamashita, a space agriculturalist of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, and his colleagues announced a project to remediate the Fukushima area with sunflowers. And they were joined by Koyu Abe, the head monk of the Joenji Temple, and the hundreds of followers that he organized. Working together, they planted over 8 million manifestations of Saint Helianthus. Thank you, Saint Helianthus. In Fukushima and Chernobyl, Brooklyn, Boston, and New Orleans, Alberta, Canada, Ohio, and Detroit, and so many other places, so many other human accidents, errors, and careless derelictions of duty, that is where St. Helianthus goes, where she is needed, to do what needs to be done, with a radiant countenance, a cheerful demeanor, and silent grace. So now you know some of her story, as I do. And here's the issue I have faced my entire life. The more knowledge I have, the more questions I form. So I need to ask, can we, as Donna Haraway suggests in her book Staying with the Trouble, make kin with Helianthus? And if we can make kin with her, can we then venerate her? If we can venerate her, can't we then beatify her? And if we can beatify her, can't we honor her sacrifice by canonizing her, knowing even if the Roman Catholic Church refuses the canonization, she can remain our personal patron saint. Saint Helianthus, the silent, graceful, radiant saint, the healer of earth and water.